I'm Myriam.
And I'm Elyse. Two friends bound by the love of books.
Taking on the world one chapter at a time. This is the Book Bound Besties podcast. Hey, Book Bound Besties! Welcome to the last episode of Season 2 of the Book Bound Besties podcast, where we dive deep into your favorite books, have unhinged chats, and Elyse theorizes about what's to come since she has not read the whole book yet. Until today.
Yeah,
Elyse has finally finished Iron Flame. That is what we're talking about today. We're talking about the last 6 chapters of the book. Besties, we have officially made it through 2 seasons, through all of the existing content of the Empyrean series.
Insane.
I know.
It's been quite the journey.
I'm very relieved to have gotten to this point. I've been dreading getting to this point because I knew what was happening at the end of this book, and I said last week, I really didn't want to get here.
But we're still friends. I'm not mad at you.
Yeah, shockingly. Very, very shockingly. I am wondering what is wrong with you that you did not have the same reaction I did, but anyway.
We'll get to it.
Yeah. If you want more Book Bound Besties content, be sure to follow along on TikTok and Instagram. We post funny clips from our episodes, silly videos, and we also post unhinged book reviews, which are reviews that we record immediately after finishing the book. They're usually very little information and purely vibes.
Yeah, lots of emotion.
Yeah.
Just emotion and vibes.
Exactly. And also, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, even if you listen on another platform. By doing so, it'll push us through the algorithm and bring more besties into the gang. This is also your content warning. This episode does contain topics that are not suitable for little ears, so beware. We do not hold back.
There will be definitely some swearing in this episode.
For sure.
Before we get into it.
Yes.
How you doing?
I'm good. I feel like we've had a big week content-wise. So as besties, you know, we record in advance. Mm-hmm. And this weekend was, well, actually, the end of last week was the release of the second half of Brigerton. And Elyse and I had a really cute little Brigerton night, her and I. We had high tea and fancy cookies. And I was not a fan.
Yeah, I have to agree. The season kind of fell flat. And it sucks because I was really looking forward to this season because I adore Penelope. And I thought I adored Colin until the season happened. And it was just lacking.
Yeah, I mean, I have bookmarked a ton of TikToks for you to look at because, I mean, I honestly, Elyse is like, meh, I found this season lacking. I actively disliked it. And I was really upset by a lot of things. So I have read all of the Brigerton books more than once. And I won't say that Romancing Mr. Brigerton was my favorite among them. My favorite is actually difficult to say, but I feel like it's The Viscount Who Loved Me, which is Kate and Antony's season, or Kate and Antony's book, and When He Was Wicked, which is Francesca's book. I'll save my thoughts on Francesca for in a second. But basically, the thing that I loved about Romancing Mr. Brigerton is that Colin and Penelope's relationship blossoms and grows not only from the friendship that they've had for years before, but also their shared love of writing. So in the book, Penelope does find Colin's writing and he gets upset at her and blah, blah, blah. And then he finds out she's Lady Whistledown before they get married, like in the show. But he also is okay with it. Their wedding is happy. And actually I saw somewhere that no Bridgerton weddings have been happy.
Huh.
That we've seen on the show. Yeah. Which I think is really sad. And then the preamble to the reveal of Lady Whistledown is the same, that Cressida is blackmailing Penelope. But what happens in the book that I find so beautiful and romantic is that Colin actually wrangles his whole family into this plan to do this beautiful reveal where he makes this speech about how proud he is. And he reveals Lady Whistledown, but he reveals it in a way that's loving.
Embracing,
yeah. Which I understand kind of what the show was doing, that they wanted it to be more of a feminist moment of Penelope owning it or whatever. But I don't know. I just found their whole romantic arc fell so flat.
Yeah. You didn't feel the love.
Yeah.
And I was saying, because we've discussed this at length, guys, but
I can talk about this all day. Like, I feel so strongly about this. I could really talk about it all day, and I'm trying to dial it back to like not alienate people.
I haven't read it, so I think that's also part of why I'm just like, yeah, it kind of fell flat because I didn't have the knowledge of what could have been.
Yeah.
But I think in rewatching season 1 and 2, because I did a rewatch leading up to it, and I've rewatched them several times, that the moments between Colin and Penn are so cute and the heart flutters are there. And so we had this promise of a beautiful love. And then when it came to it, the moments were just so like meh.
Yeah. There was zero chemistry, zero nothing.
Which is insane considering, I don't know if you guys watched the PR stuff leading up to the season, but their chemistry on the red carpet was so good.
Even in interviews, they've been great. Yeah.
So it's just like, where was that in front of the camera?
Yeah.
I don't know. It sucks.
The thing that probably pissed me off the absolute most was the reveal of Michaela. That made me so mad. And actually, I watched this morning.
You have to give context for those of us who haven't read the book.
I will. But I watched a TikTok this morning that explained something. So essentially, this is a spoiler for When He Was Wicked / Francesca's season. But then again, God knows what they're going to do. In Francesca's book, she meets John. The whole time we're watching it, Elyse is like, John is such a dud. Like, I don't understand, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, that's the whole point. You're not supposed to like fall in love with him because he dies. The story of When He Was Wicked is that Francesca marries John, and then like 2 or 3 years into their marriage, they wake up she wakes up one morning and he does not. And the whole story about Michael is John's cousin, and John became Earl because John's father is 6 minutes older than Michael. So they were raised super close together. There's that tiny bit of tension there to begin with because of the line of succession and who got the title. But also the night before Francesca and John's wedding, Michael sees Francesca for the first time, falls head over heels in love with her, love at first sight, and then realizes who she is. And so then he has this like forbidden love for her and becomes like a rake, or kind of amps up the rakishness, goes to India, catches malaria, and then he comes back after John dies. And then Francesca, like part of their love story is like she treats him or takes care of him while he has a malaria flare up, blah, blah, blah. And then whatever, they fall in love. But a subplot of all of this is that Francesca and John have fertility struggles. And now that Michael is Michaela, how the fuck are they going to do that? There's no IVF in Regency era England. So to me, that like takes away a really important storyline. And the TikTok that I saw today said that if they were going to make any sibling queer, they should have made it Eloise.
Yeah, because at the beginning I questioned.
Yeah, she's the one who has been pushing against the patriarchy, pushing against the marriage mart, pushing against all of the expectations of women. Her story is beautiful in a way. No, her story is beautiful, but it's not one that you're like dying
in the
for.
Books, you mean?
In the books, yeah. So if there was one that like I would be okay with quote unquote sacrificing, it would have been Eloise's, not Francesca's. Francesca's is just so emotional. It has a totally different vibe than all the other Bridgertons because it's a little bit darker. We open the book up and there's a death and there's grief and there's fertility struggle. Like there's so many obstacles.
Which are all like things that are, I mean, I guess they do talk about grief and death in the show, but something like fertility is an important topic to touch upon. A lot of women are affected by it. And to see that story on screen, I think is probably important because we don't talk about it. There's so much shame around it. And
I think it would have been a super interesting thing to discuss in the framework of that time period. Whereas now, you know, women still experience fertility struggles and, you know, we know women who have gone through things, but now we have science that has made so many leaps and bounds that, you know, despite maybe it taking you a little bit longer or being a more circuitous route to parenthood, there are so many more options available to you that at the time there weren't. So I think that would have been a really interesting, and like, I guess the whole subliminal like message of when he was wicked was that Francesca was actually meant to be with Michael and not meant to be with John. And that's why they couldn't conceive type of thing.
Okay.
Which I'm not too sure how I feel about that side of things, but you know, that's kind of the romance
side of it.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, so those are my thoughts on Bridgerton.
Let's change the mood.
Yeah.
And read an email from one of our listeners.
Yeah.
Because we received this wonderful email and it just made both of us so happy that we want to spread the joy.
Absolutely. If you ever are listening to us and being like, oh, I want to say this like really dumb thing, or I want to share this thought, or I just want to say something nice, please do. You have literally no idea how happy and giddy it makes us. So this is an email from one of our listeners, Claudia. She writes, hi, Myriam Elyse. I'm writing to thank you and congratulate you for your podcast. It's so entertaining and makes me laugh so much. But so has like many O's, which I love. I'm moving to Canada for work soon. I'm from Chile. I said that funny. And at the end of last year, I decided to start reading books in English to improve my vocabulary. I picked a bestseller on Kindle, From Blood and Ash, and ... boom. I became addicted to romantasy novels. I continued then with Fourth Wing and Iron Flame, and I was so devastated when it was finished, so I needed to talk about it with someone, and that is when I got to your podcast. You have made me laugh so much, parentheses, I'm still listening to season 1, and I finally feel so understood. After Iron Flame, I started reading the ACOWAR series, and it happened to be more or less at the same pace Elyse was reading it on the podcast. So funny. Anyway, your podcast has been very meaningful to me these past few weeks while unpacking to move to Canada, a reprieve from the chaos around, so I just wanted to thank you for that. Sincerely, Claudia.
I love that so much. Thank you so much for writing in, Claudia. Honestly, everything you're saying is why we started this podcast.
Yeah.
And it just feels so nice to know that we are reaching those like-minded people and that we are actually creating a community out there, even though it feels sometimes like we're just talking in our living rooms, that we are creating this group of people that are coming together over the love of books.
Yeah.
It's really special.
Yeah, we've really enjoyed taking the time to get to know individual listeners and individual followers on Instagram and TikTok. And our goal is to one day broaden this. Because honestly, the common feedback we get is, one, they feel like they're just listening or talking with their friends in their living room, which is exactly the vibe we've always been going for. And two, that they don't have other people in their lives to talk about these books with. And I think that if we can do something about that and put all of these amazing people into like a virtual room together, we want to. So that is a
it's
sneak
on the
peek
horizon.
into the, exactly.
It's on the horizon, but yeah, we would love to be able to bring our community together in some way. So.
Let's jump into Navarre.
She says apprehensively. Yes. Oh my God.
Okay.
Whew.
Let's do this.
Here we go, guys. Chapter 61. The riders look out onto the oncoming horde of wyvern with bated breath. The battle begins, and Violet's wielding skills have improved as she takes them down with accuracy. Avenin manages to mount Tern, but Violet is stuck in her saddle. The chapter ends with Rhiannon jumping in to intervene. So many like highs and lows over
I
these
know.
chapters. I'm just like, oh my God, what? Okay, no, we're okay. Oh my God, no, what? Like it was very much that.
Yeah. The pre-chapter blurb comes from Major Edvard Tiller's unaccredited study of the venin, property of the Library of Corden. And it says, though there is some debate, it is greatly believed that turning venin heightens one of the Dark Wielder's senses. It is this scholar's belief that the one responsible for the death of King Grethwild developed keener eyesight, for not even the best of his majesty's flyers could see through the darkness the venin hid within to slay our beloved king. So, it is the hour before dawn, and the squad is standing on the ridgeline above the main campus of Basgiath. It is giving the Death Eaters staring over Hogwarts before they attack the Battle of Hogwarts.
We said it last week, I think. It's like the Battle of Hogwarts.
I know.
It's the Battle of Basgiath.
The image of Lilith standing in front of the gates, quote, she's in front of us all, her 3 children, and the place she sacrificed us and her very soul for. Like honestly, and I know we're definitely going to be discussing this further as these chapters progress, but like this last chunk of chapters is the reason I love Lilith so much and that I see her as such a morally great character.
When I read her scene, her big scene.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, this is why Myriam has been pushing and rooting for her.
Yeah.
So I think maybe upon going back and reading,
You're going to pick up on things.
Pick up a few things, but I really don't know that we truly saw it until this moment.
Yeah.
So that's why I was like pushing back so hard.
I
because
know.
I was like, why are you rooting for her? She
know.
sucks.
I know.
But like you were influenced by what happens in these chapters. So anyway.
We learn that Brennan is already working in the ward chamber with Sloane, Arik, and the other first years. And Rhiannon took a page out of Taryn's parenting book because she's giving them quote unquote jobs to assist Brennan, but it's actually just to keep him safe and out of the kind of battle. Rhiannon and Riddick talk about how scared they feel, and Violet's like taking inventory of her weapons. Sawyer asks her if it gets any easier going into battle, probably hoping that it does. Meanwhile, infantry has been deployed into every courtyard, hallway, and entrance, and all I can think about is how many husks of human beings there's about to be, because we know that the infantry are always the hardest hit. Xaden answers for Violet, saying, quote, no, you just get better at hiding it, meaning hiding the fear and all of the feelings that come with
going to battle. Yeah.
Then he asks everyone if they're clear on the plan, so the riders answer to Rhiannon, flyers to Brigerton, which I thought his name was Trigon. Was that a typo, or am I imagining things? Or was I mistaken and it's two different people? Was his name always Brigerton?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not good with the names.
Okay, that's fine. Anyway, Imogen reiterates that they stay in their own sector. Quote, should a wyvern leave our airspace, we let it become another squad's responsibility so that we don't accidentally leave our sector unguarded. We maintain our airspace at all costs. Rhiannon is on dagger duty. She'll fetch and distribute them should any venom fall from their wyvern and take a dagger with them. And then Violet reiterates that the prize is the venom, not the wyvern, and that in their experience, the venom stays close to the wyvern that they created during battle. The squad then has a group hug, and Violet leaves them with parting advice. Don't freeze, and no matter what happens, keep moving and stay in the air. Riddick reiterates that no one dies today. Then, as if we needed a distraction in this moment, Rhiannon asked Sawyer if he saw Jacinia, who flew in with Marin. She's in the archives comparing the two journals. And when Violet stresses out over the fact that Jacinia is defenseless, being back at Basgiath literally during a battle, Sawyer and the squad have her back. Quote, she was worried she'd figure out the difference between the journals and be too far away to help. And if Brennan mends the stone, she's our only chance at raising the wards here successfully. And then Rhiannon reminds Violet that Jacinia has as much of a right to risk her life as the rest of them do. And it just kind of brings you back to that moment when Violet and Jacinia are talking, and Jacinia says, your squad has the right to know the information that you know. So I found it was a nice little parallel.
Yeah. I love that this group of people have put choice at the forefront of what's important to them, because in Navarre it's so not.
Yes.
That I'm just like, yes, the next generation gets it. Like,
absolutely.
It's great.
Then Violet turns to Andarna and asks her to promise to stay hidden. And like, no big deal, Andarna camouflages into the night.
Yeah.
Taryn tells Violet that it's the benefit of being a black dragon. They're born for the night. And I'm like, but is she?
Honestly, at that point, I thought she just like went into the shadows.
Right. You didn't put two and two together.
I didn't think anything of it.
Right. Okay. Violet asks Andarna to stay put, but that if the tide of the battle turns, to leave and to go back to Erasia. And Andarna refuses, quote, I will stand, I will keep watch, but I will not leave you this time. And she huffs a breath that scents slightly of sulfur.
Foreshadowing?
Whoa. Mayhaps. It's almost time, and Xaden meets Violet before Mountain Sigale, giving the most romantic goodbye ever. Violet tells him she loves him too, and they agree not to die today. Xaden kisses her and says, quote, you keep your focus on the enemy and your life. Even Malik himself couldn't keep me from you. This is very intense shit to be saying right before going into battle. It had me feeling very, very nervous the first time I read it.
Yeah.
How about you?
It made me think of a line from Princess Bride. So I was just like, oh, because I'm so in love with the love story in Princess Bride. But there's a part where the male main character says, death cannot stop true love. All it could do is delay it for a while.
Ah, beautiful.
I know.
I love that.
I know.
Now is when the teary moments really begin for me. We had that like introduction to the weepiness with Lilith before, but now we're just if you think of like a graph of teariness, it's just going to go continuously upwards for those listening and not watching. It starts to rain. And Xaden is like, rain in December? But it's Lilith. Violet says, quote, it's her way of imbuing her favorite weapon, me.
At this point, I was riding the line between it could be a gesture in good faith towards Violet, but it could also just be a tactic. You know, like at that point, it could still just be a war tactic of she is the most powerful thing. This is going to help her. This is how we're going to win this battle. So I was like still towing that line of, but I didn't know what was coming.
I know. Xaden leaves Violet with another kiss before mounting Sigale, saying, quote, remind me to thank her afterward. So sweet, except so sad because he won't have the chance. Violet is concerned about the rain, though. While it will help her wield, it prevents the griffins from flying. And I just want to say, these are weak-ass creatures. They have a lot of limitations, don't you think? Dragons are definitely superior.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
For once, Taryn is like defending the griffins because he says, worst case, they'll guard the ground and ferry the wounded.
I mean, we need those people too.
Totally.
No,
but you know how like Taryn threw all of Fourth Wing, well, as soon as Violet learns about the griffins or sees the griffins for the first time, and then through Iron Flame as well, Taryn's always talking about how superior dragons are, and I just thought it was funny that in this moment, he decides to have their back.
Yeah. I mean, they're still superior, but
yeah. Yeah, that's true. Then Violet looks to the approaching enemy and freaks the F out because they, being Navarre and the Eurasian cadets, have seriously underestimated their numbers. Once they're close enough, Violet can count how many venom there are, but stops at the 24 mark, meaning there are more than 24, but she just, at that point, gives up on counting.
I can't even, it's such a scary moment. Like, even, I love Lord of the Rings, and every scene at the end when they're about to go into battle, and, like, there's just a sea of orcs and, like, Uruguay and everything. My heart sinks every time, and I know how the movie's gonna end. It's just, like, that fear of, holy shit, that's a lot of people. And, like, how are they gonna get out of it? It's so scary.
Yeah, it is definitely not a good thing.
No.
Violet starts second-guessing their plans, but Taryn patiently, for once, reminds her that they're better off where they are. This is their home turf. They know the mountains. He observes that the Venin are spreading out. Quote, their formation indicates they'll engage all of our forces instead of targeting the Vale as we'd planned for. So this means Violet only has a short window to wield because as soon as they engage with the dragons, she's just as likely to hit a dragon as a wyvern. She starts to get ready, accumulating power, so much so that it's making Xaden a little bit nervous. So as the storm overtakes the wyvern at the highest altitude, because like the storm is like rolling in, I guess, she releases the torrent of her power, aiming it upwards. So it's funny because in the past she was aiming it downwards, but now, anyway, whatever. I mean, it's not that funny. I'm trying to find like something because I have so much nervous energy in my body right now. Lightning cracks, striking the cloud, and bodies fall, but not enough. The remaining wyvern adjust their tactics within seconds and fly under the cloud cover, swerving to dodge their dead compatriots. And then Violet knows, like, it won't work again because the wyvern, just like the venin, they learn and adapt to the fighting style.
Yeah. They change their flight patterns and avoid the clouds, which is annoying.
I know.
But to be honest, I was impressed with Violet. Her training has obviously, she's still not perfect, has improved. Yeah. Because in the next part, like, she does manage to get a couple on target hits. So she's just like, okay, maybe we're going to come out of this.
Yeah.
You know?
Hopefully. I mean, we don't come out of it intact, you know?
They came out pretty good.
Okay. Well, we're going to discuss this in chapter 65.
Okay.
Violet wields again and again, killing a wyvern and rider with a handful of other wyvern falling out of the sky with the death of their creator, but more arrive. And now we're in full-blown battle mode. Like you just said, her practice with Felix is definitely coming in handy because her blows are becoming more and more precise. At one point, she has two wyvern heading towards her and Taryn, and she takes one out, but then the other one is bearing a rider, and is perilously close to Taryn. And before Taryn could get injured, Shadow Lasso is back, baby.
Love the Shadow Lasso.
Sigale has claimed that wyvern, so Violet takes a second to reorient herself and realizes just how overwhelmed they are. Taryn explains that the reason the Dark Wielder probably only sent the first wave is to suss out their weaknesses, which is very, very good battle strategy, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely. Also, in that whole mix, one of the wyvern blows green fire.
Which we knew existed. We knew that there was blue fire and green fire.
Did we know about the green?
Yeah.
When?
At some point in this book.
Well, my brain didn't know.
Oh.
I only thought blue, so I was like, green, where's this coming from? And then we get more colors later. I was like,
I feel like next season we should have like a whiteboard that has like reading comprehension Myriam, reading comprehension Elyse, and like ticks and keep a running tally.
Okay.
I think that'd be so funny.
I'm in.
Okay. So Violet's just watching what's going on around her. And at first I thought she was cataloging what was going on just to stress us out. But it was actually so that she could pick her next target. And that's the group of wyvern Sawyer is fighting, one of whom bears a rider, because Sawyer is now currently outnumbered 3-1. Violet hits one of the wyvern. Side note, I wrote to myself that I think this is really confusing that the plural of wyvern is wyvern, because did Violet hit one wyvern or two?
It kind of makes sense because it's a battle, so there's a rush of so many things happening, but I had to reread the scene several times to like wrap my brain around what was happening. Also, I wasn't that familiar with the names of the dragons, so I was like, wait, whose dragon is that again? And like, it took me a second to like understand the battle.
Yeah. Anyway, the wyvern with a rider is not the one that dies, and the rider starts diving to the ground to feed, Violet assumes. Is it to feed, to channel? Anyway, she calls on Xaden to do I don't know what, but he seems to know. And then Taryn calls out 3 o'clock, and Violet notices the body of a dragon on the ground and doesn't let herself ponder who it is. She just strikes. Precise strikes-ish. She hits like 2/3 of them. Anyway, Taryn directs her attention to a new location, and now she's starting to miss. And I love how she pulls lightning so quickly from the sky that she no longer feels like she directs the storm, but that she herself is the storm. I really love that.
Me too.
Taryn warns her that she is tiring, but she refuses to acknowledge it because of the people dying. But the heat is actually really starting to get to her, so she removes her flight jacket. And as she does so, Taryn shouts that there's an entire wave of wyvern heading over her mother's sector, but also flying past, question mark?
They fly right through it.
Yeah.
Heading for Violet.
Exactly.
Ugh.
And there are 3 venom. And in the coolest way to describe 10 seconds, we get the following. 1, Riddick waving at Rhiannon because his dagger is stabbed in 2. 2, the pieces are now in Rhiannon's hand. 3, Rhiannon tosses the pieces to Sawyer. 4, Sawyer catches them, because remember, he's a metal wielder. 5, Violet and Xaden lock eyes. 6, breathe. 7, Violet checks on Brennan and Andarna. 8, Dajolaire, I can never pronounce that properly, is frustrated by the unflyable conditions. It's just like a random little like... 9, Violet responds to tell the griffins that they're more efficient guarding the courtyard and incoming wounded than struggling with water-clogged wings. And 10, the dagger is back in Riddick's hands. The teamwork in this moment was so fun to read.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed it.
They have each other's backs like they've always promised. And it's nice to finally see them put it into action.
Yeah.
I mean, not that I want them to be in battle, but it's the moment we've been preparing for. And like you see it happen and you're just like, wow.
Yeah.
They do have each other's backs. They are prepared. I mean, I understand bad things happen, but like that's part of war, unfortunately. It's just they're so well synced as a group. I love it.
I know. It was so enjoyable to read. Yeah. But you know what I love even more than that moment, and I really love that moment? It's when Taryn tells her she's beginning to think, but she interrupts him and says, like Brennan? And Sigale jumps in and says, like Taryn. Yeah. I love that so much.
Stamp of approval.
Yeah. Then they're in action. Taryn's jaw is locked on the throat of a wyvern. Violet sees a flash of blue. Remember, the venom was wearing blue robes. She grabs her dagger, prepares to release herself from her saddle, asks Taryn to level out, as the Dark Wielder jumps from the wyvern's back onto Taryn's. And Taryn demands that Violet stays in her saddle, but the venom grabs a horn. And I just put a side note. I didn't realize that the dragons had horns. We've never discussed their horns up until now, and now there's tons of mention of horns.
But I don't know that horns are necessarily like horns, like you're thinking. Because like dragons have a ton of spikes on their face, right?
Oh.
So that could be.
Okay, maybe, yeah.
That's what I was picturing.
Okay, no, I was picturing like horns.
Yeah, I don't think it's that.
Okay, good. The venom is just an asim. So just to bring our heart rates down a little bit from this panic.
Do you know that term?
I'm going to introduce the different hierarchies of venom.
Okay.
So there's an initiate, which is the lowest level. Their eyes may have reddish rings depending on how often they drain others or channel. Then there's an asim. Their eyes fluctuate in varying degrees of red, and the veins distend when riled. However, their veins are not spider-webbed like sages. Then you have a sage, who are those responsible for initiates. Their eyes are permanently red, and their veins perpetually distend towards their temples and expand with age. The last level in the hierarchy is a maven. Mavens are the equivalent of generals in Venom hierarchy. A maven has never been captured or studied. We do have a pre-chapter blurb at some point talking about
that.
Yeah.
But the one later says they're a general.
So he's a maven. The Venom announces that Violet is the one he wants. And it's always the same he, eh? Mm-hmm. But Violet can't get over how young this ASIM looks. Problem is, she can't get out of her saddle. The buckle won't give. And she's basically like a sitting duck at this point. Terrence snaps the neck of the wyvern that he's been fighting with, while Violet asks the ASIM if it's his sage that he's talking about as the he. And she tries to throw her dagger at him, but he catches it and then marches towards her, telling her she'll meet him soon enough. And then Rhiannon jumps from Farage to Taryn, landing in front of Violet's saddle in a crouch Spider-Man style.
Yeah.
And that is the end of the chapter.
Intense. But so far, everyone's alive.
So far. And unharmed.
So far.
Yeah. Awards?
Yeah. What's your most romantic?
I love you. The world does not exist for me beyond you. Leaning down, he rests his forehead against mine. I couldn't tell you that the last time we flew into a fight, and I should have.
It's very sweet.
Yeah.
Mine is the following line. Even Malik himself couldn't keep me from you.
Yeah. Oh, fucking love Xaden.
What is your funniest?
So scared, I'm pretty sure my heart's gonna give out or I'm about to shit myself. Riddick answers from her other side. I was gonna say horrifyingly scared, but sure, that works too.
Yeah.
You?
Any reason you can't just drag them all down with all the shadow power?
I wish. This would be over so fast.
Yeah.
I did not have a spicy line. There was nothing spicy, not even sassy. We were an active...
I put a conviction line.
Oh, okay.
Which is the part where she says, I pull lightning from the sky so quickly, I no longer feel like I direct the storm. I am the storm.
Love that.
Has a bit of spice to it.
Yeah, I guess. It's fierce.
Yeah.
Okay. Chapter 62.
Rhiannon and Violet prove that they will always have each other's back, saving each other in an attack. Then, in a series of incredible maneuvers, Violet manages to save Sawyer and his dragon, minus some pieces. Violet rushes Sawyer to safety, but then comes face to face with a Venom. This time, on the ground. Andarna sheds her camouflage and rushes over to intervene.
The pre-chapter blurb comes from Chapter 3, The Tactical Guide to Defeating Dragons by Colonel Elijah Jobin. And it says, the easiest way to defeat a dragon is to kill its rider. Though the creature will most likely survive the blow, it will be stunned long enough to be felled.
No, thank you. There were so many moments during this. I was like, no, thanks.
I'm good.
I don't want this.
So Violet is helpless as she watches Rhiannon fighting the Dark Wielder. She's having flashbacks to Liam, and she just thinks to herself, not Rhiannon too. The Venom disarms Rhiannon, sending her flying across Taryn's body, but Violet catches her and gives her one of her daggers. Rhiannon starts fighting again while Violet sets up her crossbow, and I love this moment of synchronicity because Violet warns Rhiannon, who flattens her body to Taryn's. Violet shoots the crossbow, and Taryn banks hard to throw the Venom off because remember, it's
exploding.
Exactly.
Arrow.
It's an exploding arrow. So just the three of them were just so like insane. I just loved it.
It's so good.
Yeah, it was so cool. Like that is again so cinematic, and it's going to be so fun to watch that scene.
Yeah, I was
play
about
out.
to say she writes such interesting and engaging battle scenes.
Yeah.
It's not just like a blur of like, oh, this got kicked and whatever. It's all like these crazy badass moves. They're jumping dragon to dragon. We have lassos. Like, it's cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Rhiannon's like, you're welcome, and then just jumps off Taryn's back and onto Farage's, which I think is so badass, and I love it. Then Taryn informs Violet that Melgren is 10 minutes out, but that only 2 aides were able to keep up with him, and everyone thinks that most of the Dark Wielders are holding out for the second wave. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, great news.
So Violet kind of takes a second to take in the situation and what's going on around her and notices that Sigale is outnumbered. How do you feel about Taryn's response, quote, if she wants help, she'll ask for it?
I think he knows her very well.
Yeah.
So I respect that.
Yeah, I thought it was empowering.
Yeah, I think if he really saw that she couldn't handle it, he would have intervened. But like he knows her so well and they've been together so long that he was like, no, she's got that.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Then the sound of a pain-filled roar fills the air. And Violet's first instinct is to think about Andarna, but it's not. It's Riddick's dragon, Atrum. He's got a wyvern's teeth locked onto his hindquarters, with 3 more wyvern going in for the kill. Taryn uses his tail to take a wyvern down with half of its head bashed in, which, side note, vom. That's like disgusting.
A zombie.
Yeah. And as Taryn prepares to take down another, Riddick is doing his best to dislodge the wyvern attached to Atrum, but it won't let go. Sleeg, Sawyer's dragon, gets there first and has his jaw on the wyvern's neck, but he's not strong enough to snap it, and in a rookie move, leaves himself exposed to the wyvern, who now have a new target. And it's 2-on-1. One wyvern opens its jaw onto Sleeg, the other blows fire, which Sawyer rolls backwards to avoid, and the third snaps at Sleeg's exposed side. So when Sawyer kicks it and he's like kicking at its jaw to try to save his dragon, the wyvern eats his freaking leg.
Yep.
Like, I'm sorry. I know, like, I've never been to war on a dragon or whatever, but like, my first instinct would not be to have a limb very close to the maw of, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't really a smart move, but I think he was a bit panicked. Sorry, it's not funny.
No, I know.
It's nervous laughter. No, I know. I don't understand why he would think, even connecting that kick, you're going to kick a giant dragon-like head, you're not going to affect it.
So I think I know where Rebecca got this from. You know, like, you hear that if ever you're like in a shark attack, you're supposed to like punch its nose. Yeah. Maybe it's that.
Maybe. I mean, I think it was just like he had fallen. He had no other option but to kick it in the position he was in, so he did.
Yeah.
And now he's minus a leg, but that's okay. I mean,
minus half a leg.
Half a leg, yeah. In How to Train Your Dragon, he's missing half a leg, the same thing. And he's fine. And he still has his dragon.
Yeah.
They're good.
It's a little bit later down in my notes, but basically, like, Sawyer is a metal wielder, so there have been some fun theories out there that he will come up with some sort of prosthetic that will allow him either a prosthetic or some sort of, I don't want to say crutch, but, you know, like some sort of tool.
That's literally in How to Train Your Dragon. He's a tinkerer and he makes himself a leg.
Yeah, there you go. And it would just be another fun, subtle way to include representation into
that's true.
the book.
Yeah. That part didn't even cross my mind.
Yeah. Well, because we don't have any physically disabled
right
other than Violet. Mm-hmm. So it would be a nice addition to round out the diversity.
Look at Rebecca go.
I know. Violet, though, is not about to lose another friend. So she slices the saddle off of herself and asks Taryn for forgiveness. And she jumps onto Atrum's back. She hands the crossbow to Riddick and tells him to fire it once she's on Sleeg's back and then to get back into his seat. Girl is planning on succeeding not 1, but 2 running landings.
You go, girl.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I love the Delulu because this girl couldn't land 1 running landing. And she's like, I'm going to attempt 2 in the middle of war.
Yep.
This is going to be the time it's going to happen.
I mean, you know, sometimes under pressure is when we perform best.
It's very true. It's very true. Taryn is so mad at her, but Violet is a woman on a mission. She leaps onto Sleeg, holding onto one of his horns, which again, now we're just like horning it up. There's just horns left, right, and center.
I really think it's just because they're on the head that they're calling them horns.
No, I understand, but it's like we've now read nearly 2 full books of these dragons, and we've never heard about a horn once.
Yeah, but how much time have they spent on their heads?
But how much time have we spent describing them?
But I think it's because you're picturing the horns as horns and not just the spikes on their head.
Maybe. I don't know. The language is really getting to me. Anyway, so she's holding onto one of Sleeg's horns and gives a signal to Riddick to shoot. She reaches Sawyer and they slide off of Sleeg in the most intense trust fall of life. Mm-hmm. And Taryn catches her in his claws. Violet's getting shit from multiple voices in her head. Xaden's like, what are you doing?
But even before that,
yeah,
Violet directly talks to Sleeg.
Verbally, yeah.
But she's not supposed to.
No, I know. She does that a lot this next chunk of chapters.
She's like, all the rules are out the window.
Oh, I know. I love it.
But like, she's right.
Oh, no. This is the time to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Taryn's like, what part of staying in your saddle did you not understand? And when she explains herself, Taryn's like, you just hoped I'd catch you. And she's just like, as if you wouldn't.
I love how she plays into his ego.
Oh, I know. I love it too. Then Taryn tells her that Brennan has mended the stone, but it doesn't feel hopeful. But Marb, his dragon, is not sharing details. So I found that a little bit odd. It's like the Lizzie McGuire movie. Very odd.
I don't understand why he wasn't hopeful.
Probably because it needs to be imbued, and it took them weeks to imbue it. Yeah. It took them weeks to imbue the one in Erasia, and this one's twice as big. They land near the admin building, and Violet screams for help, noting that Sawyer's pulse is slowing. Obviously, this guy's losing so much freaking blood. Taryn calls for aid, and Violet prays, to Malik that he cannot have Sawyer. He took Liam, so he may not have Sawyer as well. She removes the sheath from around her thigh and uses it as a tourniquet around Sawyer's leg, begging him to wake up. And in a heartbreaking line that will absolutely rip my chest open when it's on my screen, she tells him, quote, "Please, Sawyer, please. We said we'd all live till graduation, right? Remember?" Anyway, my heart. Then his eyes flutter open and says, "I remember." The sweat I sweat.
Yeah.
Making these notes. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, I thought he was gone.
Marin approaches with Kat and Brigerton, and Taryn simultaneously calls out to Sigale, so it's like stress, panic, feelings, emotions. Brigerton and Marin take Sawyer to the healers because you cannot mend what
Isn't
there. Yeah.
Yeah.
And as Brigerton and Marin leave, Kat stays behind, telling Violet that she looks like shit. Quote, "I heard what you did up there. Well, Kira saw, and she told me that took guts." Violet doesn't really take the compliment, saying that Kat would have done the same. And in typical Kat fashion, she can't let the moment get too emotional / needs to get a jab in there. So we get a shit sandwich.
Yeah.
The aforementioned compliment. Then she tells Violet she would have run faster. And then she offers her a dagger since she sees that Violet is missing one. So nice, mean nice.
But like, I think that's just her style.
Yeah, I love it.
Appreciated
Me
her
too.
for it.
Yeah, I think it's great. Kat is off, promising to look after Sawyer, and Violet looks around and notices a bunch of wyvern carcasses and a green clubtail that makes her think of Teen, which is Mira's dragon. Taryn reassures her that they're alive and then warns her that something is behind her. She turns around and there is a venom 20 feet away. Mm-hmm. Interesting that Violet notes that she has a heart-shaped face that at some point was beautiful. We don't know what level of venom this one is at, but she must have been higher up in the hierarchy if she's no longer pretty. Though, I mean, other than the distended veins, like, we don't really learn about how it affects the way they look.
Yeah. Just their skin, like, gray and shriveled. Like, we don't
I don't know. They don't tell us. They just talk about their eyes.
And the veins.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Weird. The venom tells Violet that there's no point in running. Kat now rushes back to Violet's aid, but Violet's like, "No, run away." Mm-hmm. Just as the Dark Wielder drops to the ground to channel from the earth, in typical villain fashion, the venom stops what she's doing to be sassy. Quote, "Oh, you're a powerful one, aren't you? The lightning wielder." Violet thinks to herself, "I don't have to run. I can wield." But then the venom says something very interesting. Uh-huh. She doesn't care about Kat, but she's on orders not to kill Violet. Mm-hmm. And then she goes very Bellatrix Lestrange, quote, "And I will be his favorite for delivering you. I will be more than just an ASIM soon. I will be given the veil when this is over."
Before that, there's one line I just want to point out. She says, "You'll be so much fun for him to wield."
I know.
What?
I know.
I mean, we know they control the wyvern. Mm-hmm. I feel like I need to make a list of all venom facts. I need to do some research. But anyway, we know they control the wyvern.
Yeah.
And we know that Jack was able to control the dragon.
Yeah.
But are we assuming this person is higher than the Maven? Like
who? The he?
The he?
I don't know. We don't know anything. We don't know who he is.
It must be the leader of them all, no?
Yeah, maybe.
There must be like a higher...
Yeah, I really don't know.
I'm so not used to you not knowing. Like, I'm so...
I know. We're now on the even playing field.
I know. I'm so used to like making predictions and like you actually knowing more, but I have to remind myself that no, this is the end right now.
Yeah, I know nothing.
I know. I would assume that there is a highest of the highest in the venom world that is above Mavens, who this he is referring to. All this is speculation. We don't have the facts, obviously. But if he is this powerful, like, he could wield people, like, that's scary.
That's so interesting. I interpreted it as, you know how, like, in the nightmares that she's been having, she's basically being manipulated into doing what the venom wants because of fear for another outcome or whatever. Mm-hmm. So to me, the venom could wield Violet by manipulation more than like in the literal sense.
In the control sense.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That would also make sense. I don't know. It's a creepy cult. I don't like it.
Kat's like, "You can kill her anytime now." And Violet's like, "I want to know what the hell she means." Mm-hmm. And then she remembers her nightmare quote, you will turn for something much more dangerous. Meanwhile, the venom is literally going hysterical, and Violet realizes that this is Kat's doing, and for once, I'm very happy about her mind tricks. Then there is another venom that comes out of the shadows. He throws out a hand, which throws Kat backwards, and Violet doesn't hesitate. She wields and hits the first venom, immediately killing her on the spot. The second one doesn't even seem phased. All he says is, quote, fascinating. For a reason I don't understand, Violet's conduit overheats. Maybe she's over-imbued it, I'm not too sure. And venom number 2, Wingardium Leviosa's her, which is just like in her dream, but this isn't the sage. So Taryn is like, stay calm. Xaden's like, I'm on my way. And venom number 2 tells Violet, quote, he's almost here, so let's move this along, shall we? The horde tires of hovering, waiting for permission to attack. Then a shape moves in the cliff behind him, a boulder with slivers of golden eyes. It springs forward from the cliff like a projectile, expanding, changing colors, sprouting wings and claws, and black scales.
Andarna!
Yeah.
Awards.
Yes. What is your most romantic line?
Just the way they all have each other's backs.
Yeah, I love that.
It's such a great bond that they have. And like the fact that they go into this battle and their mantra is like, no one's dying today.
Yeah.
And Violet is repeating to herself, I've already lost Liam. I'm not losing anyone else. And that's kind of like what propels them through is their friendship. I just love that.
Mine is a thought that Violet has as she's getting ready to act. Andarna, Xaden, my sister, Brennan. They all flash through my mind as my arms swing through the fall, finding only air, but it's my mother's face I see in my mind when I land on Atram's back, the soles of my boots finding purchase at the edge of one of his spine scales. I love how, like, remembering all the people she loves bolsters her as she's about to do something scary.
Absolutely. Funny.
I am quite annoyingly safe and hidden.
Mine is, my saddle is stuck. Good. Maybe you'll stay in it.
What is your spiciest line?
When she tells Sleeg, let me help him.
Oh, yeah. Powerful. Mine is, I'm going to throttle you myself once I get you on the ground.
Love it. Chapter 63. Andarna breathes fiery breath down on the venom before chomping it in half. What else has Andarna been hiding? Jacinia has translated the journal that calls for 7 and not 6 dragons. Violet then goes to meet Milgren and convinces her mother to give Racing the Wards a shot.
This chapter. Okay. It's not even the worst one, but we're getting there. We're inching our way closer. The level of dread is just raising and raising and raising. The pre-chapter blurb comes from the Journal of Lyra of Moraine, translated by Cadet Jacinia Neilworth. Quote, I'm alone in thinking the knowledge of wards, the protections they provide should not solely benefit Navarre, and it has cost me everything. Side note, everything? Last time it said it cost him everything was when we were talking about Nowlin. Did this prick your spidey senses?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, but looking back at it now, I'm not clear on the journals because Jasinia's like, no, Lyra's must be lying.
Yeah.
And like, I don't understand. Was it?
No, Lyra's was the true one.
Okay. So she just thought that because it said 7?
Yeah.
Okay. I was very unclear.
It's her internalized misogyny that the guy is probably right.
Love it.
So Andarna has succeeded in startling the venom and breathes fire onto him and then rips his head off like it's no big deal. Both Kat and Violet are in shock and awe at Andarna, who Violet points out looked like a part of the cliff. And her response was, quote, I told you I could hide. Taryn lands and is like, oh, you made quick work of it. Obviously, he has no idea what's going on because Violet's like, nope, she did, pointing to Andarna. And he's proud of her.
You breathed fire.
I know. They don't have time to bask in this momentous occasion because Taryn is relaying a message from Melgren, who's ordering them to the Vale. Xaden and Sigale land and let us know that not everyone is being called to the Vale, just the 4 of us. Well, 5 if we count Andarna in. Violet refuses, with Sawyer out for the count, and without the 2 of them, it leaves Brennan too vulnerable, and Xaden agrees. Violet tells Andarna to go to Marb, and she responds, quote, I will be where you need me, to which Violet's like, fine, as long as it's with Marb. And for once, Andarna listens to Violet. As Violet and Xaden are making their way through the halls of Basgiath, they're confronted with the sheer volume of wounded, which again just reminds me of that scene in Deathly Hallows where Harry's walking through the Great Hall and he sees all the dead and wounded, and it's just Tonks and Remus. Oh.
I know. I don't watch the last ones very often.
Really?
Yeah.
I do. They're
I
so good.
I should. I haven't watched them in a while, but like my ratio of watching the beginnings versus the end.
Really?
Yeah.
I think the one we rewatched the most is The Goblet of Fire because it's Justin's favorite.
I love that one.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I famously do not have a favorite Harry Potter book or movie. Well, movie, I would maybe say Prisoner of Azkaban just because it's like so cool and dark and whatever. But like, I don't have a favorite book. Anyway, back to Navarre. Can you tell that I'm just like, I'm stalling. I'm just like, oh, I really don't want to talk about this.
It's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's going to be fine. This is like fictitious. I have to remind myself of that. Kat informs them that they ran out of beds 20 minutes ago and that the infantry are worst hit so far, which is really not surprising. And as they keep walking, Kat grabs Violet to tell her that the Flyers will fight in the air if her mom stops the rain, but if not, to deploy them as infantry. And I just was so moved by Kat's willingness to fight and the Flyers overall. She's basically saying that if the rain doesn't stop, we'll volunteer to die because we know that the infantry are the worst hit.
Yeah.
And she also makes a good point. They have the most experience fighting venom, and griffins are very quick on the ground. So
I feel like it'd be so scary to see a griffin. Like, I mean, we're both already uncomfortable around birds. Imagine this giant bird just like running by you. Like, ugh.
Yeah, no thanks.
I would always be more uncomfortable around that than a dragon.
Oh, definitely. Definitely. Our dynamic duo is making their way to the leadership meeting, and we get a bit of back and forth with some infantry cadets who are asking to shut the gate, despite how futile Xaden says they would be. But another infantryman stops Violet and says that there's a scribe chasing her down. Xaden offers to start picking the fight without her while we hear what Jesinia has to say, and our girl has found the difference. But she thinks Lyra is the one lying, not Warwick. On instinct, you thought you agreed based on the question you asked me earlier, or were you just too confused?
No, I was
you were
just
confused.
I didn't agree. I didn't understand why she was saying Lyra's journal must be lying. Like, I didn't understand the justification.
Oh, I
was
see.
just confused.
Okay.
I was like, what are they saying?
Okay.
But I guess it was just the whole 7 thing.
Yeah. So Jesinia explains that the only difference is the breath of the 6 versus the breath of the 7.
Yeah.
Well, it's the breath of the 6 and the 1 combined.
Well, that's
versus
why
the 7, which is essentially the same thing.
Which I was screaming about because I was like, see, and the 1.
And the 1.
I kept saying, who is the 1?
Exactly. Violet's dejected. 7 dragons is impossible. There's only 6 dens. But again, at this point, were your spidey senses
Well, yes.
tingling?
Yes.
Okay.
I was like, it must be Andarna at this point. But I still have so many questions.
Violet's grasping at straws. Did Jesinia make a mistake? But no, Jesinia shows her friend how she figured it out. So Violet thanks her and sends her to the infirmary to look after Sawyer. And if he gets evacuated, Jesinia can also get evacuated if she's with him. They tell each other to be safe and they separate. Violet's thinking, could the 1 be a griffin? But no, quote, if a griffin contributed to the wards, flyer magic would work within the boundaries, but there aren't 7 breeds of dragon. And then she has a dramatic stumble realization. Like, as I was reading this, I was like picturing a scene in a movie, but like, do you know when you can like picture something? It's almost like when a word is on the tip of your tongue, but like you can't. Could it be like a Harry Potter reference when like he gets a vision of Voldemort vision? I think it is. Sorry, this is like a realization happening in real time.
You're like working it out.
I'm working it out exactly in real time. So you know how like in Deathly Hallows Part 2, which you just said you don't rewatch that often, so you may not remember this, but when Harry is like running around the castle, and then at one point he gets the vision of Snape and Voldemort, or it's when Voldemort's voice, there's a moment where like Harry physically like stumbles into a wall. That's how I pictured this moment. That was a really long-winded way to say that. Violet shuts down all of her thoughts and focuses on the argument in front of her. Xaden is saying absolutely not to something we don't know, and Panchek is asking whether Xaden thinks cadets will be able to defend all of Basgiath. Lilith asks Violet what she's doing there, and in such an immature quip, Melgren's like, she's never far from him.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, Melgren was like such a baby in this scene.
He's like a man baby.
He's like, you're the reason I can't plan efficiently. You're the reason for this. No. I couldn't see the battle because of you. Like, it's just like, okay, Melgren, you're in war right now, not the time.
I know. Lilith interrupts that the veil is the only thing that matters. The archives have been sealed and the rest of the fortress can be rebuilt. And that's when Xaden realizes that they're just going to run away like little scared chickens and abandon Basgiath. When Xaden asks why not move every cadet to the Vale, Melgren says that, quote, you might lead a revolution, Ryerson, but you know nothing about winning a war. Meaning, he's willing to sacrifice cadets while those in the Vale have time to prepare. Prepare for what? We don't know. But he's willing to have a human sacrifice, basically.
Yeah, I felt like they weren't like divulging all the info. I was like, what are they up to?
I know. Unclear, but also irrelevant, considering what happens next.
Yep.
Violet argues that they won't need to do all of this because Brennan has mended the ward stone. Lilith is like, yeah, but Brennan can't mend magic. And Violet's like, no, but he doesn't have to. Once the stone is mended, it can hold power. We can raise the wards. And she was very adamant about the fact that they could do it, and she knew how. Mm-hmm. Lilith knows that they weren't exactly successful in Erasia, but Violet's like, no, I can do it. Like, I know what to do now. They argue. Taryn interrupts to warn Violet that the Venin leader has arrived. Lilith is like, cadet to Violet, and Violet's like petulant teenager level of insistent, saying that she can do it. Quote, at least see if the stone can hold power before you sentence us all to death. And then the yelling begins. Listen to me! Violet yells at her mother. For once in your life, listen to what I'm telling you. She forges on. For once in my life, trust me, have faith in me. I can get the words out. Like, to me, this was just heart-wrenching. But then she explains, quote, if we raise the wards, every wyvern on this field is dead. Every dark wielder is powerless, nearly powerless. Name one other weapon capable of managing that feat. Just go down there with me and see if it'll hold power. Help me imbue it. If it doesn't hold power, then I'll do whatever you want. But I can do this, General. I know how. Love that moment.
Me too.
I really feel like it was a turning point in the chapter and like the vibes with her mom.
Well, it's a huge turning point in the relationship. If you think about that first day we meet Violet and Lilith, that first chapter.
Yeah.
So Violet's scared of her mom. She's scared to defy her mom. She's just forced into this life that she never wanted or foresaw for herself.
Yeah.
And she doesn't know how to deal with it. And like her mom is just so cold. And then finally, after all this, Violet's like, no, you need to listen.
Yeah.
And she does.
Yeah. Melgren waves Violet off, but Lilith tells Melgren to wait. Quote, this is my school. I said wait. Melgren responds in typical small d energy. It's my army, and there is no waiting. Xaden points out that it's only half of his army. Dang. And then he offers his hand to Violet and says, walk with me, Violet. Melgren asks where they're going. The Venin are about to attack. And Xaden says that they're waiting for him.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What? How do you know this, Xaden?
I know.
What is happening?
I know.
What is...
We're going to have so much to discuss.
In this moment, I was just trying to figure out, like, what is his connection? Because I didn't even consider the dreams at this point, but I was like, what is his connection to the Venin? And for a half second, I was like, did he barter with the Venin? The way he went to barter with the king? I'm just like, did he have another plan? Like, why are they waiting for him?
All right. Awards?
Uh-huh.
What is your most romantic line?
The fact that Lilith listens to Violet.
Oh, yeah. I love that. Mine is I'm buying her the time she needs.
Do you have a funny?
It's like meh, but go to Marb. I will be where you need me. Fine, as long as it's with Marb.
Yeah, it is kind of funny.
I mean, it's...
Mine was Kat saying, did you just eat him? And I was just like, finally, Andarna gets to eat something.
It's true. She's been obsessed with it for books.
Yeah, she does spit it back out. But anyway.
Spiciest?
You do not speak to dragons. You do not ride human.
Mine is that a Xaden line, and it's when he tells Melgren. Melgren says about it being his army, so he decides. Xaden says, quote, the other half is mine, and seeing that you had no problem having my father executed, I have no problem leaving you to die if you refuse her help.
Boom.
Yeah.
Melgren seemed like such a small man in these moments.
Yeah, I told you, small D energy.
What a piece of shit. Chapter 64. Are you ready for this?
No,
chapter?
I am not. I am not ready.
Well,
Can we not?
We're doing it. Here we go.
Okay.
Xaden hints to a connection with the sage and goes off to face him. Violet tries to imbue the stone, but can't do it on her own. In the ultimate gesture and proving her motherly love, Lilith sacrifices everything to imbue the ward stone. Power surges through Navarre, and the wards are back up.
I really don't want to talk about this. The pre-chapter blurb comes from recovered correspondence of Cadet Liam Mari to Sloane Mari. You're going to love Violet. She's smart and stubborn. Reminds me a lot of you, actually. You just have to remember when you meet her, she's not her mother. Okay, well, let's do this. As they're walking, Violet asks Xaden, what does he mean they're waiting for him? Xaden locks eyes on the Venin, who's front and center of the horde, and he explains that that's one of their teachers, the one who escaped Resin. He was also at the cliffs when Xaden revealed his second signet a few chapters ago. Xaden, reading his intentions, tells Violet that the Venin thought they'd be at Samara. I say ? Because when Violet asks how Xaden knows that, he just says, do us a favor and don't ask. Excuse me?
I think it's because of the dreams.
Maybe, but how from the dreams would he know that they thought that they'd be in Samara? That doesn't make sense.
I think, Oh, that's good. Good point.
Thank you. Stumped you, didn't I? Violet asked Xaden if he had to choose where to correctly raise the wards, would he choose Basgiath or Erasia? She explains that she only has the resources to raise the wards in one of the two places, and he tells her to ward Basgiath. She nods and then speaks directly to Coda. She knows she has to be quick because she's been blocking Terran off, and she knows, he's going to break through her shields at any moment. She accuses Coda of knowing but not telling his rider because, quote, dragonkind protects dragonkind. She tells him she's figured it out and that she's used Terran's fire already on the wardstone, so she's asking for his help. The balls on this girl.
Yeah. She is fascinating because you drop her in hot water and there's nothing she won't do.
Yeah.
And she just does it. She just figures it out and she does it. And I have so much respect for her.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
100%. She actually tells Coda that he will come, quote, we're all dead if you don't. The Empyrean will end. Side note, I want to know more about the Empyrean and like how things work and how big is it and anyway, all those things. Coda nods and Terran finally is through her shield. Violet explains that she needed to confirm a secret that isn't hers to share. Then she turns to Xaden, quote, I don't want to leave you and I have about 1 million questions as to why you think they're coming for you. But if I don't, ... All he does is he grabs the back of her neck, kisses her and says, quote, you and I both know you can't raise the wards and stay to fight. When we were in Resin, I held them back while you fought. I trusted you to handle yourself. Now trust me to handle myself while you get the wards up before more people die. End this. I love you. Violet orders Terran to stay with Xaden. She starts running and yells at Melgren to let the flyers fight. She tells her mother to cut the storm so the griffins can fly, and as she's running, she's pushing the exhaustion out of her mind. She's thinking of the people she couldn't save and the people she still can. When she finally arrives at the Wardstone Chamber, she asks if it works. It took everything Brennan had to mend it, but it is mended. He tells her to try to imbue it, but it took her weeks for the one in Erasia. She confirms that it does hold power, but they don't have enough riders who can imbue it down here. So the thing is now they're like stuck between a rock and a hard place because they need every rider they can to imbue the Wardstone. But in doing so, they run the risk of further tipping the scales in the Venin's favor by removing people from the battlefield. So she calls Andarna down there. Actually, she orders Andarna down here. And then she asks her, why didn't you tell me? And get ready for a big info dump that I'm very, very surprised, besties, didn't make Elyse cry.
The info dump?
Yeah.
About Andarna?
Yeah. Quote, I know. I should have known earlier. The second I saw you after Resin, I knew something was different about the sheen of your scales, but I figured I'd never been around an adolescent, so what would I know? Andarna agrees, and that she's always felt different, which Violet points out is why she never felt like she fit in with the other adolescents, and it's also why she was allowed to bond. Keep in mind that all this time, while Violet's having this conversation with Andarna, her hand is on the Wardstone, imbuing it with her power. Violet continues, acknowledging that she should have listened to Andarna when she claimed to be the head of her own den, and why no one could fight her right of benefaction, why the Empyrean allowed a juvenile to bond. Andarna demands that she says it. Say it out loud. Violet responds that her scales aren't really black, and my heart shattered when Andarna changes her scales color to camouflage with the stones around her. Quote, no, but he is, and I so badly want to be just like him.
I love that so much.
Oh my gosh, it's so cute and sad. And
so much love and respect
for Terran. I know.
It's so cute.
But then Andarna reveals that Terran doesn't even know. Only the elders do, and the elders revere Terran because he is strong and loyal and fierce. And then Violet tells Andarna that she is all of those things too. She could have told her. She didn't have to hide. Sassy Andarna is back though. It's fun because, we're having this like deeply emotional moment and then we kind of pull it back a little bit. If you didn't figure it out, you weren't worthy of knowing. Now this is the info dump, okay? Quote, I waited 650 years to hatch, waited until your 18th summer. When I heard our elders talk of the weakling daughter of their general, the girl forecasted to become the head of the scribes, and I knew. You would have the mind of a scribe and the heart of a rider. You would be mine. You are as unique as I am. We want the same things. See, does that not make you emotional? She waited 650 fucking years.
Yeah, I just didn't cry.
Oh my gosh.
It's so touching. I never said I wasn't touched. I just didn't cry.
Yeah, but you're like a weepy baby.
I don't know why, but the only part that I got slightly teary-eyed this whole time was when Andarna jumped in and killed the venom and protected. I was just like, yes, okay, things are going to be okay. Andarna's here. Otherwise, I did not have a
I'm
tear
shocked.
in my eye.
I'm shocked. When Violet's like, you couldn't have known I would be a rider, Andarna simply says, and yet here we are. So this potentially can support Violet's second signet theory relating to seeing the future, because since it has to do with the chemistry between the dragon and the rider, and since Andarna somehow knew she would become a rider, maybe that supports the theory that like seeing into the future could be a thing, potentially. Who knows?
Oh, yeah. Okay. The whole thing, though, with the second signet, this is kind of an aside. The fact that she had a power and then it got removed, wouldn't the second signet maybe have something to do with that first power? Like the whole time.
Some people think so. So it has something to do with time. But seeing into the future has to do with time.
That's true. Maybe it all makes sense.
Maybe. Who knows? All this to say, Andarna is the seventh breed. Violet admits that she wants Andarna to tell her everything, but that, quote, our friends are dying, so I need to ask if you're willing to breathe fire on the stone. Andarna responds that that's why she was left behind. At least that's from what she remembers. It has been centuries.
Which, can she breed more of her? Is she the last one and the only one? Like, how does dragon breeding work? So, like, Sigale and Taryn are two different breeds. If they were to have a baby, would it take one or the other? Like, how, or do they have to be inbred to maintain lines?
I have
like,
no
how
clue.
does it work?
I don't know.
Can we have more Andarnas?
Would, like, black and green make brown?
Or would it just take one or the other?
I don't know.
Like, how are they all so segregated?
I have no idea.
But then they bond within each other's. I have so many questions
I
about
know.
how dragons work.
Dragon genetics.
Yeah, like we were saying the other day, like Rebecca needs to like release a book on signets and release a book on dragons. And
Yeah.
like,
Actually, JLA did that with From Blood and Ash.
Oh,
She released a
fun.
compendium that has a full, it's an encyclopedia basically of her series, which is awesome.
I love that.
Yeah. When Lilith comes down to the Wardstone Chamber and blows Ark's cover in the funniest way, Violet tells Andarna that she doesn't trust her mother with the secret, so she urges her to fly away. Meanwhile, Taryn feels Violet pushing her limits and allows her to see through his eyes what's going on in the battlefield. So Xaden is fighting the sage, who is easily blocking his shadows with blasts of blue daggers of fire. What? And Xaden has thrown his daggers at the sage and missed. So this is bad, 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 because the sage is gaining on Xaden, backing him against the edge of a ravine. Then Taryn looks towards Sigale, who's fighting 3 wyvern, one of which now breathes red fire. So fan-freaking-tastic. There's a new type of wyvern. All the while, Violet is still imbuing the stone, and Andarna warns her about burning out. Taryn calls out, Silver One! But she just says, you both have to live. Promise me you'll choose to live. So sad.
I know.
Violet's realizing that she's going to have to give all of her power, her life, to imbue it. Brennan and Lilith are trying to stop her, but Violet wants to keep channeling. She's thinking about all those she loves. Notably, she mentions her friends, her siblings, and Xaden, not Lilith. General Sorrengail shouts, what's your signet, to someone, but Violet doesn't even have the strength to move her head to find out who. Andarna shrieks that Violet can't do this. Now, do we think that it's because Andarna has some sort of bigger plan, or because she loves Violet in this moment when she's shrieking? Is it because she needs Violet, or is it because she loves Violet? It could be both.
I took it as love,
Okay.
but what you're bringing up is good point. It could be more. I mean, there obviously is a bigger plan at play here if she was purposefully left and purposefully woke up for Violet.
Yeah.
It's like the world and life knew that there was some sort of destined thing. Maybe they just had this sensation that the wards were going to fall, and that's why Andarna was born. But why was it born to Violet specifically? Like, it feels like there's something more at play. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now that you bring it up.
So it's actually Arik who answers Lilith, and he admits that he still has not manifested a signet. Brennan hits the ground beside his sister, but she can't make out what he's saying because she's still channeling her power into the Wardstone. Taryn orders her to cease, and she says, quote, I'm so sorry. You shouldn't have to lose 2 riders this way. And then she's hit the realization of why someone would turn Venom. And in one of the most heartbreaking lines to come Taryn demands, quote, "You must save yourself. I chose you not as my next, but as my last. And should you fall, then I will follow." Andarna is pleading with her to please let go. And Violet's argument with her dragon is interrupted by Sloane shouting that she won't do it. Then Violet sees her mom kicking her shoulder, breaking her hold with the warstone. She hits her back onto the ground, but Brennan is there grasping her arms. So she shuts off her power not to hurt anybody with like the inferno that's basically like going on in her body. And while her dragons feel relief, she just feels defeated as her brother mends her. Lilith is yelling that it's the only way, quote, "You can't imbue something this big in an instant, not with hundreds of riders, which we don't have. If you want to save your friends, you'll do this." Lilith continues to egg Sloane on. "You're Amari. I killed your mother." Things are like so chaotic in this moment. Violet's yelling at her mother. Brennan collapses beside Violet. From the exertion of mending her, Lilith is still egging Sloane on. Quote, "I tracked her down and hauled her to her own execution, remember? You were there. I made you watch, you and your brother." At this point, did you have any clue what Lilith was doing? Really? Good for you. Tick for Elyse in the reading comprehension.
Because she's a siphon. Well, because Sloane's a siphon.
Yeah.
But yeah.
She continues, quote, "I could have stopped his death too if I just paid a little more attention last year to what my aide was doing," as she picks Sloane's hand and puts it on the stone. Violet is now putting two and two together, but Arik stops her, quote, "I can't. She's right. And if I have to choose between her life and yours, I choose yours." Oh, Violet screams for Andarna, who also agrees. Quote, "I'm so sorry. I choose your life too. You are mine. I can't let you die." The tears that welled up in my eyes as I wrote these notes, oh my gosh. It's just like, it's such a difficult decision and it's made out of so much love. And like everyone is feeling so conflicted.
Yeah, because there's no winning, right?
Yeah, it's just, oh.
Yeah.
Lilith continues, quote, "Can you hear them up there dying? That's what's happening. Your friends are dying, Cadet Mari. Tyrandor's heir is fighting for his life and you can stop it. You can save them all." Lilith picks up Sloane's free hand. And remember, Sloane's other hand is on the stone. Violet yells out to Sloane, "Don't do it. That's my mother." And she throws down her shields to try and reach Xaden, thinking he'll be able to convince Sloane. But when she does, all she feels is pain and hopelessness because Xaden is dying. Lilith is still talking Sloane through her plan. Quote, "You don't have to do anything but stand there. Your signet will take over for you. Think of yourself as nothing more than a conduit for power. You're simply facilitating mind flowing into the stone." Violet is not physically there. Somehow she's embodying Xaden's frame of mind, dying on the battlefield. His strength is fading, but thinking it's all worth it because it'll save Violet. And these two, with their self-sacrificial crap.
We've said it before. They were both sacrificing themselves for each other. Just Violet got interrupted.
I know. She screams down the bond to fight. And this girl is being torn in like 5 million different directions between her fear for Xaden, her fear for her mother, what's going on, her body breaking down, her brother beside her. Like things are so all over the place.
Isn't it crazy how the switch flipped for all three siblings watching their mom die?
Oh, I know.
Because they hated her.
I know. Well, except for, no, Mira didn't hate their mom. I will argue that Mira was the closest to the mom.
Lost a lot of respect for
She
her
did.
mom when the whole wyvern thing happened.
I know.
They condemned her.
I know.
Basically to death. And then finally actually being there and seeing it happen.
I know.
They have different feelings.
I know.
Relationships are so complicated.
I know. Lilith looks to her daughter, eyes softening, telling her, quote, "It's all right. As soon as my power, Aimster's power, lives within the stone, fire it. Raise the wards. There's nothing I wouldn't do to keep you safe. Do you understand? Everything was to get you to this moment where you'd be strong enough." She falls to her knees but doesn't let go of Sloane. The chills, like I have goosebumps right now. The lump in my throat. Like honestly, whatever we thought of her, this woman came through for her children when it mattered most. She's not only sacrificing her life, but she's sacrificing her dragons. Violet is in denial, and I feel so terrible for Arik, who, is continuing to hold her back and apologizing for it. Then Lilith truly breaks my heart even further. Quote, "You're everything we dreamed of you would be, all three of you, and I'll get to see him soon."
Yeah.
Like, no.
Yeah.
No. Like,
No, I
that
know.
just makes me so freaking sad.
I know.
Like, I don't like
I know. I understand that.
just like, you can't tell me that this woman didn't love her kids. Like,
Well, now I can't.
yeah. She loved them
Last week
so
I
freaking
could.
much that she's like, you always hear this. And like, I grew up hearing this all the time. Like my mother would always say, like, I would literally die for you. I would like, that's a mother's love. And this woman put her money where her mouth was. Like she is Anyway, okay. Violet is begging her not to do this. Brennan is crawling to her. Brennan, who's been an asshole to her this whole time. I found this is, spoiler for ACOWAR, this is giving Nesta.
Oh, yeah, because in the moments of life and death, like, you truly see what matters most.
Yeah.
And, like, Brennan had so much hate and hostility towards his mother and couldn't forgive her, but then literally watching her sacrifice herself for him and siblings, he, like, realized that, no, he does truly care about his mom.
Yeah.
After living through all of this, and now that she's dead, the three of them are just going to have to replay everything and live with all the hateful things they said towards their mother. And it's so conflicting because, like, the hate and the anger is still real.
And warranted.
But then she also did this thing for them. It's such a complicated, like, the amount of therapy they're going to need to work through
I know.
this. Like,
but that's why I said she is truly morally gray. She's done terrible things, but, you know, her intentions, whether we agree with the reasoning behind them, they've been noble. And yeah, anyway, her last words, live well, had me sobbing.
I know.
Oh, it just, yeah.
And then the first thing that Violet thinks to herself, too, once her mother is dead, she says, I can't breathe. She's the tide, the storm, the very air, a force too big to be extinguished without ripping the world itself apart to the core. How could she be gone?
Oh. These siblings are now orphans.
Yeah.
What?
They're all over 18, but yeah. But yes.
Yeah, but that doesn't stop you from being an orphan. Like, you now have no parents. And I don't know. I think the way that she describes the numbness and denial. Oh my goodness. So Lilith falls forward into Brennan's arms as Violet senses a hum emanating from the wardstone. So at least the sacrifice wasn't for nothing. Finally, Arik lets go of Violet, and she reaches her mother only to not feel a pulse, no heat, no life. She's gone. Meanwhile, Mira makes an appearance, pulling her mother's body from Brennan, but obviously Lilith is unresponsive. Sloane apologizes, and you know what? Like, I appreciate what Lilith did, but the burden that she just put onto Sloane, who's going to have to carry this guilt.
I didn't fully understand why they needed Sloane. Like, why couldn't she just put her whole force into the stone without assistance?
I don't know if maybe Lilith's self-preservation might have come into play at some point. Yeah. Or maybe using the siphon made the process faster, more painless. I mean, you don't see Lilith experience any burnout, right? You just see her power being leached out from her and her becoming increasingly weaker. So maybe that's it.
Maybe. I mean, I guess she does siphon quickly.
Yeah.
Maybe quicker than they can control their own power.
Maybe. I'm really not sure. But the one bright spot I think that could come from this is that this experience would help Sloane understand Violet and what she went through, that in war there are casualties and you have to make difficult decisions and it's not your fault. I don't know. Anyway, Mira's going apeshit on Brennan, blaming him for this. Meanwhile, Andarna tells Violet that Xaden needs her and that Taryn and Sigil will wait with Xaden. They start to leave the chamber, and Andarna protects them all from the fire that flows from the 6 dragons above the chamber as they raise the wards once again. And I just have chills at the last couple of sentences. Quote, when Andarna moves, my gaze wanders up the mended wardstone to the iron flame that burns black on top. It's all that's left of my mother. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just such a, like, beautiful symbol.
Yeah.
For her love and protection of her children.
Yeah. You know, in a lot of these fantasy and romantasy books that we read, a lot of times there is no parent. Oftentimes we're talking about an orphan, we're talking about an abandoned child, or whatever.
Or at most there's one.
Yeah. And I think that what's so beautiful here is that even though for all of these 2 books, we've not understood Lilith, we couldn't reconcile her behavior with the behavior of her children. We couldn't reconcile why she didn't have a change of heart, why she didn't abandon Navarre to join her children in the cause. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because she did what she truly believed would protect her children. And we didn't understand what that meant of her staying with Navarre, but she came through, and that's really...
She came through when it mattered most.
Yeah, and I think that this is an interesting... So this is a spoiler for ACOWAR, the ACOWAR series, and primarily ACOWAR. But as you read ACOWAR, Papa Archeron
Sucks.
is pretty useless through ACOWAR and ACOMAF, and he basically fucks off during ACOWAR, and we don't know where he goes, but he does come at the very last minute, riding in on the Nesta with ships and troops, and he really comes through for his daughters. And I don't know what this says about my views on parenting or whatever, but I don't really understand the discourse of people being like, well, him doing that doesn't like mean he's a good dad, and doesn't mean that he like doesn't absolve him from like not being there for his kids like when things got tough. I just think that like this is a man who obviously went through it, but like when push came to shove, he came through for his kids. And I feel like it's the same thing for Lilith. Like maybe I just extend a lot of grace to like parents because I think that, like I've said before, they're doing life for the first time and they don't know any better, and like they're literally doing their best. And they're also human beings. Like whatever Lilith did or was, she wasn't doing it because she was evil. She was doing it because like she was going through her own shit, and she couldn't, this was the best she could do. And the same thing for Papa Sorrengail. Like he was depressed and he was, you know,
he
like
was fully depressed.
Yeah. So yeah, okay. Was it super shitty that his like child, who was still a child, went out and fed his family? Yeah. But like he literally was catatonic. Like he couldn't do anything. So I think that like, again, when it mattered most, he found a solution to save his daughters and save the world. And does that like take away from him not being a fantastic father all the time? No, but like, does that mean he was a bad dad and like that didn't redeem him? Also no.
Yeah, I think it doesn't fully make up for everything, but in the moment where he finally was able to, and in the moment Lilith finally was able to, they did the right thing, and I think that counts for a lot.
Yeah.
But I think the reason why people are so like have such a hard time fully forgiving is like the damage is still done, and that damage still needs to be worked through.
But it can't, because they both made the ultimate sacrifice.
No, but like for the children, like whatever choices that the parents made for the children in the past has created conflict or issues for the children, whether that's like mental health issues or physical or whatever. That damage is still there, and that damage is something that the kids need to work out on their own. It's like apart from, like they have done something that kind of has messed up the children, and the children need to work that out. So like there is the fact that Papa Archeron, for instance, was catatonic, whatever, it has created really shitty sibling bonds between Nesta and Feyre. So like he was a catalyst for that, and that's something they need to work through. It's apart from him, but that damage is still there. So I think it's hard to fully just be like, oh, you made up for it because you sacrificed yourself. There's still a lot of damage, and there's still a lot of pieces that need to be put back together. So it's hard to fully forgive.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I think that's why people hesitate with that, which I understand. Like,
but like a lot of them will say that the sacrifice that these parents made is like essentially is not enough.
Oh.
Which I think is just wild.
What more can you?
Exactly. That's what I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the other end of it too, though, the damage is done. So you have to find ways to move forward. So like that is the moving forward.
Yeah. And like their sacrifice is allowing them to have a future to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway, awards.
Oh, yeah. Therapy time. I only have a romantic.
Okay.
You're everything we dreamed you would be, Mom says quietly. Her skin paling even as Sloane's flesh is scarlet. All three of you.
Oh my God. Love that. I love that so much.
Yeah, me too. What's yours?
Mine is, you are my home, and if we all die here today, then the knowledge dies with us anyway. Ward Basgiath.
Love it.
Yeah. I do have a funniest line. And
You found something funny in that chapter?
I did.
I'm impressed.
Thank you. It's nice to see you, Cam. Your father's been looking for you.
Yeah.
I'm a bonded rider. There's nothing he can. Don't care. It
Yeah.
holds power.
Yeah. She's just like, shut up.
Yeah, that was it. I don't have a spiciest line, though.
Okay. Yeah, it was hard.
Chapter 65.
Nervous laughter.
I fucking hate the end of this book.
Okay. Good thing we're getting into it.
Mm-hmm.
A gray rain scatters Basgiath with wyvern. The wards are back up. The rest of the squad are alive and well. When Violet goes to see Xaden, however, she realizes that he too sacrificed everything for her.
Okay. This is... Okay. The pre-chapter blurb comes from recovered, unsent correspondence of General Lilith Sorrengail. Quote, most generals dream of dying in service to their kingdom, but you know me better than that, my love. When I fall, it'll be for one reason only, to protect our children. It just makes me so weepy.
Yeah.
It's just so beautiful.
Yeah.
So this means like she was writing to her husband.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. It just makes me so sad. This is the first time I cry. It's just like, ugh.
Crying is allowed here at BBB.
No, I know. It's just like, this woman gets so much hate on the internet, and I feel so bad for her. And like, I remember Violet had even said like she's changed so much after her husband died. Mm-hmm. So like the Lilith that we know is not the Lilith that like they knew.
Grew up with.
Yeah. And
yeah, we don't know what that was like. But I mean, it's the same thing for Dane, right? Like,
yeah,
there was this amazing Dane, and then we got shitty Dane.
Yeah.
And who knows where we're headed in the future, but readers could only feel and process what they're given. Mm-hmm. So it's the same.
I know. It just like, I just think of like who she was as a person.
But we don't know.
No, I know. But like little things like this give us a peek into what she was like. Mm-hmm. Anyway. Woo! All right. The first thing that Violet hears as the wards have been raised is the thud of wyvern bodies falling from the sky and Andarna begging her for forgiveness. Violet simply tells her that her mom made the choice, but that doesn't stop the sorrow and grief the Sorrengail siblings feel. Taryn, in typical no-nonsense mode, tells her, quote, you are alive, you will live today, you will wake tomorrow. Violet asks about Xaden, whose shields are up, and is told, simply, he lives. As they emerge from the tunnels that led them to the chamber where the wardstone is kept, they're greeted to the sounds of cheers. And Dane is the first face she sees. And Progress, he's ready to reach for her, but then he stops himself. Rhiannon interrupts, grabs Violet by the face, and praises her for raising the wards. But Violet is almost unresponsive. Mm-hmm. She asks her friend if she's okay, and Rhiannon reassures her, quote, it's nothing. You should have seen it. The wyvern started falling from the sky like dead weights, and the venom panicked and ran. Leadership is hunting them down. So that's good news, and Violet asks about the others, and apparently Riddick is okay. Imogen took a swipe to her side, but she's barely complaining. Quinn has a busted cheek, and Rhiannon said she was just headed to check on Sawyer. Then she asks about Xaden, who Violet says is alive, but explains in a broken, like, convoluted way that her mom sacrificed herself to power the wardstone, and her friend just hugs her and allows Violet to break down and sob. When she stops crying, she sees Brennan is giving orders while seated because he has no strength left, and Mira has disappeared. We literally do not see her for the rest of the book. Again, Rhiannon is proving to be such a great friend because she just asks, what does Violet need? And Violet reaches out to Xaden, but his shields are still up, so she says she needs to see Taryn and Xaden with her own eyes. Sigale is chopped liver at this point. Taryn tells her that he's out front, and as she walks to him, she hears negotiations between Melgren and Devera. Bodies are dropping all over the kingdom. There's no chance leadership can hide this, and he wants to negotiate the return of the Erasure cadets to Basgiath because obviously Navarrian civilians will know they've been lied to. Mm-hmm. Violet passes what she calls an open graveyard as she reaches Taryn and Sigale. She asks her dragon if he was harmed, and he says that she'd know if he was. And Andarna lands beside them. So Violet simply says to them both, you need to talk now.
Now, yeah. At this point, I don't know if you remember, but did you suspect something was wrong?
No. It was the shock of my ever-loving life.
Because at this point, everyone is good. Everyone's alive. Okay, we lost half a leg. Like,
We lost half a leg.
I was expecting a bloodbath. Like, I was expecting to lose a few people.
Yeah.
And I understand, like, we lost Lilith, but from the group, I was expecting people to die. So I was like, half a leg, that's fine. Like, that's okay. So I was coming from a place of like, oh, I was expecting to have to say goodbye to so many people. Mm-hmm. But then I was also like holding my breath because I'm like, what's coming? Like, what is happening? Because I was like, there's no way the internet is this mad about Lilith dying.
Yeah.
Like, this can't be about Lilith.
No.
So I was like, yeah. And I didn't know what was coming.
But you knew something was.
But I knew something was, but just based on how people are like devastated by the end of the book and whatever. But I was like, but Xaden's alive. Like,
but keep in mind, I also so the book came out on a Tuesday. I was reading this on a Thursday.
No, I know.
So like I didn't have time, like I stayed off the internet. So I didn't know that people were mad by the ending.
No, I know that. I would have been like, we're in the clear.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the fact that I was like holding my breath.
Yeah, for sure. She walks to Sigale and Violet has enough. She's in a deficit of shits once again because she asks Sigale, are you going to let me pass? And Sigale actually compliments her, quote, you fought well today. And when Violet says, oh, thank you, like, you did too. Sigale gives us a bit of sass, and I love it. She's like, yes, well, I'm expected to. And then she warns Violet to be careful with her words. Did that strike you as odd?
In reading it the second time, yes. The first time I didn't notice. I don't know if I said this actually on air, but I read the last 6 chapters without taking notes, and then I went back and took my notes because I just needed to be fully in the moment, whereas normally I'll start taking notes on my first read, and then I end up rereading a few parts as I do my notes. I just needed to read these on their own first.
Which is totally understandable.
So yeah, I didn't catch it the first time, and the second time I was like, huh, that is a suspicious, weird thing to say.
Violet reaches Xaden and asks him what happened. He responds flatly, I killed him. Quote, snapped whatever tether he had on me and killed him. His body fell into the ravine, and now I keep watching the river like it's going to pop back up, even though I know he's miles downstream now. What tether? Anyway, Violet apologizes for not being there and tries to reach for her hand, and he tugs it away. What did you think at that point?
I don't know. I just kind of read it. Quickly, I think, because I was just like, what's the punch? Like, what is happening? Yeah.
Okay.
But I did, in rereading, obviously knowing how it ends, I was like, oh, he never looks at her. Oh, he's keeping his eyes on the ground. I don't know that I noticed that the first time.
Yeah, well, because the thing is, he's a broody boy, so it kind of is like...
racing, reading this last part. I was just like, what's going to happen? What's happening? So I don't know how well my brain was firing at this point.
Fair. Then he says that he's not sorry because she saved them all. Violet doesn't take credit, giving it to her mother and explaining how it happened. And now it's Xaden's turn to apologize, which Violet doesn't really understand because Lilith killed Fen. Xaden responds, quote, I didn't want her dead. I could never want anyone you love dead. And then there's like an uncomfortable silence. So Violet tries to make conversation, telling him that Melgren wants them back. And Xaden agrees, quote, then we come back. Erasia's wards are already weakening and these are intact, which you'll explain to me later, right? And then he quickly looks at her, but then looks away. And she promises to. And then he says, good. Quote, it's safer for you here. This is where we should be. You won't be as scared under the full wards. Alarm bells?
I actually read it with my bookmark covering the end.
Good for you.
Because I was like, I don't want to pull a moment where your eyes flick to the
Yeah,
other.
I do that all the time.
As soon as I turned to the last page, that was the first thing I did is I hit it. Because I was like, I don't want to read the end till I get there.
Wow.
And then I did line by line, reveal, reveal, reveal.
Good for you. Violet's like, what?
Yeah.
Quote, I just fought an entire wyvern army, dark wielders and raised wards, losing my mother in the process. Please, do tell me what could possibly be scarier than that. He just says, you love me. And she's like, you know I do. And then she grabs his hand, which he allows, but he still won't look at her. So she asks him, quote, what's out there that I should be scared of, Xaden? What did he tell you? What did you see? Then he looks at her. And when he does, she realizes why he hadn't all along. And that's when he whispers, me. You should be scared of me because his eyes are rimmed by a faint red rim. This is why I was so mad. This is why I was in a mood for literally days after reading this book for the first time. My number one book boyfriend is a fucking Benin. I'm so mad. Justin literally Okay, so I finished this book at like 7 a.m. because I woke up really early to finish it before work. And I was obviously in a fit. I'm part of the Rosebud's Realm Discord channel. So I go onto the Discord channel, into the Iron Flame discussion, and like read everything everyone said, because there was other people that read the book faster than me. And I was just like in that, I've never been so active in a Discord channel in my life, or in like a chat room. We're like talking about it. Justin at one point like wakes up, comes to see me, and I was like, don't talk to me. Like, no, I'm not okay. And like, I gave him so much attitude for like the whole day over a fictional character.
That's so funny.
And then I was texting with you because I don't know what I told Elyse, but I was like, you need to read the series. Like, it's so good. And I'm so mad. I don't know what I said. And that's when she's like, oh, you should start a book talk. And I said, no, I'm not doing this by myself. That's so much freaking work. I said, I'll do it if you'll do it with me. And she said, okay. And then
here we are.
There we go. So anyway, no awards this chapter. I'm sorry. Nope. I have nothing to say.
I reacted very differently. I was stunned by the information. Like, I didn't know how to wrap my brain around it. I sent you a video. Yeah, I was sitting where you are, because that's my reading chair. I was just like in shock. I didn't know, because I was like, what does this mean? Like,
bad things. Bad things.
I think kind of what I was telling you is like, I don't know what this means. Like, we don't know the process of the venom. We don't know how it works. We don't know if it could be fought. Because
no, we do know it cannot. No, Jack says it in the next chapter.
You trust Jack?
Yes.
No.
I trust
Absolutely.
Jack.
Maybe I'm in denial, but
I think
just,
you
like,
are. I'm sorry to say.
I think we don't know enough to know how the process works. And nobody, as far as we know, has ever become Venin. As far as we know, there's nobody who has become a Venin who didn't actually want to become Venin, who wasn't actually power hungry. And Xaden, at the moment, is still Xaden. Other than his eyes. He's still Xaden. We don't know what that means with his ties to Sigale and the power. We don't know. There's so much we don't know. So I'm just like, how bad is it? And I know Jack said there's no cure, but has anyone truly ever looked? Okay, Nolan tried to mend Jack Barlow's soul. It didn't work. Maybe that's not the route. Like, it just hasn't been explored enough that I refuse to believe that, like, this is the worst thing possible until we know it's the worst thing possible.
Yeah.
Scott was working outside. He was gardening, and I just, like, went outside and stood there, and he's like, are you okay? I was like, yeah, I just finished the book. He's like, and? I'm like, I don't know. He's like, you didn't like it? I'm like, I don't know what to do with the information.
Yeah.
And I literally just, like, traipsed around our backyard in silence. He was like, are you okay? So we had very different reactions.
Yeah, I genuinely thought, given how you are so much more emotional than me as a person, that like you would have a much more emotional reaction.
Yeah, I think I was just shell-shocked. And I have been thinking about it a lot more. I guess I like refuse to believe that this is the worst thing possible. Like, there has to be the way Violet is, and like her problem-solving skills, and the fact that Xaden doesn't want this. I think that's a huge factor. Because Venin, they do it because they want the power, or they're like inherently evil or whatever. Xaden doesn't seem to have that, and he seems to want to get rid of it. So I'm like, oh, he's just going to be Edward Cullen. It's fine. Like, he's going to be the vegetarian Venin. We're going to find a way around it.
I appreciate your optimism.
That's me.
Do you have any awards?
I do.
Oh, okay. Let's hear them.
Romantic.
Yeah.
You're alive. You will live today. You will wake tomorrow.
Okay.
Taryn says that. And that's it.
Okay. All right. Let's read the last freaking chapter of this book. Let's do it.
You're like so mad right now.
Besties, like I said this last week, there's a reason I did not want to do this book, because this ending is so upsetting to me. And I understand Rebecca Yarros is a romance writer. So I know that by the end of book 5, we will have a happy ending, because that's what romance books are. But I just don't want the angst. I don't want the danger, the trauma,
but we don't know that there is going to be angst. Like,
there is.
Violet,
I guarantee you.
Violet is sleeping next to him already.
Yeah, I know. That raises a lot of questions.
She says in that moment, what gave me hope too is in that moment where she's channeling in the ward sound, she says, I now understand why people would reach for the power in the ground.
Yeah.
So she has a moment of like, I get it.
Yeah, I mean, what people theorize as being the reason that she's in his bed is that she had told him when he reveals his second signet to her that her love is not fickle. And she's really committed to him. So this is her proving that her love is not fickle. But I don't think that this means there's going to be no angst. There definitely is. Like, there's going to be now a whole journey to try to find a cure for venonism. Or,
Yeah, but that's not angst between them.
well, we don't know. Maybe Xaden is going to become tempted by the like. There's
Probably.
yeah. So
that'll be part of the arc. That's
he may
fine.
turn more venom.
Yeah. And then they'll find a way to save him.
Okay. Lisa's not like emoting enough for me, and
No,
she usually emotes.
I just
like
think
more than enough for the both of us.
I think if you're gonna hate this, if Xaden turns evil for a part of this series, I think that's thrilling.
Oh, it's going to be great.
I love that.
Yeah.
So I just know that in the end, they're going to be able to find a way around it.
For
and save
sure.
him. So in series and movies and everything, I love when people lose their soul. I think it's the most, it's so fun to finally like, to see a character you love turn evil for a bit and then come back. I love it.
Okay. Well, I'm a romance reader. I like rainbows and butterflies, okay? I don't like this.
Oh, man. I love it. I think it's so exciting.
Okay. Well.
So I don't hate that story arc for him. And even if that isn't his path, obviously it's going to be hard. Obviously it's going to be a struggle. But like, I just don't think it's the worst thing in the world. Like, I don't know.
Okay. Well,
I'm curious to see where it's going to go.
let's get this shit over with.
Okay. Xaden replays the events in his dream, the venom, being on the brink of death, Violet almost burning out, and finally reaching for power in the ground below. Back at Basgiath, he turns to Jack Barlow, asking for the cure. Jack tells him there is none, but Xaden is determined. He will not let this consume him.
The pre-chapter blurb is a missive from Lieutenant Colonel Nolan Culbercy to General Lilith Sorrengail. And it says, "We have tried every method we know of as you requested. There is no cure. There's only control."
See, that's what made me think of Edward Cullen.
Okay. I'll give it to you.
Would it be... I guess also I'm coming from a place where I thought he was going to die. So I'm like, oh,
I think this is worse.
That was my question. Do you think this is worse?
Yeah.
Really?
This is his soul.
You think it's worse?
I think it's
They have a
worse because
chance at-
because if he becomes more and more venom and like more and more evil,
Yeah.
so that's like sad not only for him, but also for Violet, who could potentially lose the love of her life.
Potentially.
Yeah. Okay.
But what
I'm
if she
being
did?
pessimistic. I don't know what to tell you. Okay.
No, but potentially. What if she did? What if he died? What if in that moment he died?
Then there's hope. There's 3 more books, so there's hope that she falls in love again with her actual love of her life, who's healthy and not a toxic relationship.
You're telling me Xaden's not actually the love of her life?
No, I think he is because they're endgame. I know that they're endgame, but like, I'm just saying that if that were the case, then I once again got manipulated by the author and fell head over heels for the not love of her life, and will fall even harder for the real love of her life. I'm just saying, I'm falling for the author's manipulation. Okay.
Do you think anyone could replace Xaden? Freaking Ryerson.
If anyone could come up with a character that would, it's Rebecca Yarros.
This is wild.
In Rebecca, we trust.
Oh, wow. Actually, you shouldn't trust her because she's just going to rip your heart out.
I know. Apparently, we're going to be even more mad by the ending of Onyx Storm, so that's great.
Well, good thing. I'm not that mad, so I've got a way to go. I understand your frustration. I'm looking at all the positives.
But the thing is, like, I'm super frustrated, but like, in like weirdly the best way possible because it's so good and I'm so invested in the story and I love these characters so much that like this really bad turn of events really pissed me off. But to me, that's a good thing because that means, I don't know, I bought into the world, into the book, into the story. So anyway.
I think now that like the stun of it all has worn off, I'm just excited by the potential storylines. I just like bypassed the anger. I was like, I don't want to be angry or sad. I'm just going to go from like shocked to excited and things are going to be okay.
Yeah. I think maybe you're also being influenced by the fact that this is not all over the internet. I was in almost
yeah, you were in the initial bubble of shock. With everyone.
So like everyone on TikTok was like panicking and freaking out and upset about it along with me. And so it almost like fueled the fire of my emotions.
That would make sense.
Yeah. We're back with Xaden, getting a Xaden POV, and we have a flashback to the moment where he turned venom. He's sensing Sigale's terror as he's suspended midair. He's frozen, his power is locked inside of him, and he's worn down. And worst of all, he's burning out. The sage walks around him, and this is giving Charity Burbage over the table at Malfoy Manor. Just like suspended, helpless. And the sage is almost taunting Xaden. Quote, "It hurts, doesn't it? Nearing burnout? Magic does like everything in balance. Take too much and she'll consume you for overstepping." The sage sighs, quote, "You strike, I block. You throw, I dodge. Just like in Xaden's nightmares." What?
Yeah. The shock of my life.
I know. Then he asks himself a very interesting question. What is it about me that fails the females in my life? What females? Is he referring only to Sigale and Violet? Or is he lumping his mom in there too?
I was wondering that too.
Okay.
It's a great question.
The sage tells Xaden he's going to give him one last chance and releases him from his suspended hold. Then he says, quote, "I told you once you'd turn for love, and you shall," which is exactly what he told Violet in her dreams.
Because it wasn't her dreams. It was his dreams all along. It's like,
is that what you think?
Yeah.
So you think that Violet dream walks?
Yeah.
So you think that's her second signet?
No. It doesn't have to be signet. I think they're just tethered in a way that she was watching Xaden's dreams along with him, not realizing they weren't hers.
Okay. Interesting.
It could totally do with a signet, but I don't know that it's necessarily the signet.
Okay.
I think it's just part of their like weird tether.
Okay. Xaden's like, "You don't know anything about me." And the sage just says, "I know more than you think." What? How? Why? Who? Where?
I know.
Xaden asks why? Because you're a sage? But no, he's not a sage. He is a general, which makes me ask once more, why on earth is there a hierarchy of venom? It makes no sense to me and seems counterproductive to their goals, but I digress.
Which is what we were saying a few episodes ago. Honestly, in this moment, I was like, Rebecca should have provided an appendix with the explanation of rank, because I don't know if a sage is higher or lower than a general. I'm like, I don't know. Lower. You explained it before. But I didn't know. In this moment, I'm like, should I be more scared?
Yeah.
Or less?
But actually, very interestingly, when they were fighting, I believe it was in Resson, if I'm not mistaken, Xaden is fighting this guy.
And they call him the sage.
No. Terrence says a general recognizes a general.
Huh.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Xaden reaches for his power despite being near burnout and has a super badass line, quote, "Generals die the same as soldiers."
Boom.
But the general / sage is unperturbed. "Do they?" he asks. "Come on, Shadow Wielder, turn. It's the only way to save her." Xaden cusses the venom out, but he feels down the bond and feels Violet's plan to sacrifice herself. And the venom just eggs him on, quote, "You know what'll happen when you fail? I'll step over your dead body and find her, then I'll wrap my hands around her delicate neck and drain her." And that is just too far for Xaden. He slams his down into the ground and delves into Sigale's power to keep holding onto the venom. She's encouraging him to hold on, but he can't. The sage / general is just too strong, and Xaden is running on fumes. He thinks to himself, quote, "I'll be damned if Violet suffers the consequences. He won't get his hands on her, not today, not ever." And then he channels the power from the ground. Sigale shrieks that he can't, but it's too late. He reaches. The next thing we know, he's gasping for air, upright in bed, as if it was a nightmare. So, was it a flashback? Was it a nightmare? Was it the future? Could this all have been a dream? A la Wizard of Oz?
I did find it interesting that it mirrored the time that Violet had a dream and then woke up in bed with Xaden, and then Xaden wasn't really there, or we don't know. Like, there was a weird, like, blip in the timeline.
Yeah.
Because it mirrors that scene exactly.
I know.
And then he's like, oh, she's there. She's sleeping. Like,
yeah.
So, yeah, it's weird. The fact that there's a lot of chatter about the idea of time and her second signet and all of that, feels like the pieces are coming together to build something like that.
For sure. So like you said, he wakes up and Violet's in his bed with him. He drinks her in and admires her beauty, the scars she's earned, and the grief still etched on her face. Quote, "While I won't mourn the loss of Lilith Sorrengail, I can't stand the pain Violet's suffering, and yet I'm about to be the biggest cause of it." He whispers he loves her and climbs out of bed, and he's making his way through the tunnels of Basgiath, and as he's walking, he notes that he doesn't bother reaching for Sigale because she's been eerily silent since the battle ended. Is it because their bond is broken? i.e. something's happened to it and him turning venom, or is she mad at him?
So from the beginning, every time we see venom, there's been a couple clues that kind of made me think that Xaden was somehow attached to the venom, like the color of the skin. There was comments. Anyway, so I was like, are they Tyrish? Do they hail from Tyrande or whatever? So I have this like insane theory. Because the people in power, like I feel like there has to be a big reveal, right? The venom, the he, if it's someone we don't know, I feel like it would be like anticlimactic that we finally meet him and we're just like, oh, it's just a random venom.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, who could possibly be the guy? And I know there's a lot of different theories as to like who it could be, but I was wondering if it was Xaden's grandfather.
Oh.
And that the ties and that bond or whatever is still there to Xaden by way of Sigale.
Oh.
Because we don't really know if ties are totally broken when a rider becomes venom.
Mm-hmm.
But if there is, maybe the bond is slightly weaker or something, but if there is some sort of tether that would link the head of the venom being Xaden's grandfather to Sigale to Xaden. And that's why he is so pulled and connected by the venom. And we know that the venom share like a collective web.
Yeah, a collective consciousness.
Yeah. So that's my theory.
Interesting. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I don't like that, but I like that.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's terrifying.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I think people have been like, oh, it's Violet's dad. Oh, it's Nolan. I guess, well, yeah, people probably have listed everyone who has died, you know?
Yeah.
But it would be crazy that it wasn't someone we knew because there's been so much buildup.
I like that point that you're making, though. I think that's a really good point.
Who the he is.
Yeah.
So the storyline I liked the most was it's the grandfather.
Yeah, I like that. So Xaden uses his power to open the doors as he's passing through these hallways, passing the clinic where he says, quote unquote, we'd spent hours waiting for Sawyer to come out of surgery earlier. Does that mean everyone knows he's venom? Does that mean he's hidden it so far? What do you think? Because if he's with everyone, like when I first read this book, I just figured the venom reveal happened and then they just apparated into his bedroom. I don't even, like, I know that that's not actually what happened, but like, I didn't really think of the time frame between that reveal happening and then them being in bed. So I didn't really pick up on this little interlude of them waiting for Sawyer to come out of surgery. So now that I read it the second time and I came across that sentence, it's like, okay, but there has to be some sort of like logistics happening here. Either his eyes are so faintly red rimmed that only Violet notices because she knows his eyes so well and like stares into his eyes all the time, or everyone knows and everyone will work together towards finding a solution. But the thing is, Xaden's like very prideful, so I'm not sure he would humble himself to that point where everyone would know his like weakness of having turned venom.
Yeah, I feel like he probably would try to hide it, at least for the beginning.
I agree.
And I also think, I don't know that everyone would, with that information, accept it.
100%. Very good point.
I think a lot of people wouldn't.
Totally. So as he's walking and he's using his powers, he notes that his signet is stronger as he passes the guard watching over Jack's room. Jack greets him, quote, "You look good. Here to dose me? Pretty sure I'm not due until tomorrow morning." But Xaden's not there for pleasantries. He wants the cure. Jack misunderstands, thinking Xaden wants the cure for the serum, which is the antidote. But Xaden's...
I think he was just being asked.
Oh, okay, maybe. Xaden's not here to play. Quote, "Tell me what the cure is, and I won't send for the Rivestad chest that will hold you in the air until you mummify." Jack stands and tells Xaden that, quote, "Cures are for diseases. What we have is power, and that, dear Ryerson, is incurable. It's enviable." Xaden calls bullshit on it, but Jack says, "Nope, there's no cure. You can never give back what's taken. You'll only hunger for more." Despite feeling the craving for power under Basgiath, Xaden claims that he'd rather die than become venom, but Jack basically tells him, too late, and the book freaking ends.
Yeah, now we gotta wait 6 months.
Yep. More than that, 7. It's the end of January.
Right. And then more than that, because if we're keeping our pattern, I'm not reading it.
Oh, is that what we're gonna do?
Well, I don't know.
We'll have to discuss.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see what the future holds.
We will.
Oh, man.
Last awards of the book.
Oh, I don't have awards.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I forgot.
I have a spiciest line and a most romantic line.
I think I forgot.
That's funny. Okay, well, I'll just say them then.
Go for it.
My most romantic line is, "You cannot," Sigale shrieks. "I chose you." That makes me sad.
And that also ties well into my theory because she's lived this before.
Potentially. Yeah.
Potentially.
And my spiciest line is, "And yet, you just did. All this time, you've been convincing everyone you're the hero, and now you'll be the villain, especially in her story. Welcome to our fucked up family. Guess we're brothers now." Yeah. Yep. Well, I'm glad we're done with that shit show. Oh my goodness.
Oh, man.
That is the end of season 2.
That is. So, because there are still so many unanswered questions, we will have a little chat session coming up, a little bonus episode, if you will, to talk through theories and talk through all the questions we have for the Empyrean series, because there's still a lot to cover.
And Elyse hasn't been able to dive into them because she had not read the whole book until this weekend.
Yeah, I still haven't. I was gonna read theories in prep for today, but then my brain was just so tired. I just couldn't handle processing things. So
I think anyway, it's fun to leave them for a full theory episode where we can just talk about them. So I think that'll be fun. And we have a special guest.
We do. Now that you've reread it, how do you feel?
I think I have the same opinion as I did before we started season 2, that the relationship drama pissed me off probably even more than it did the first time because I stewed in it a lot more. And the ending pissed me off. Actually, I was less emotional the second time around reading it just because I knew. But
yeah, fair. I liked it, but I understand why people didn't like it as much as the first one.
Yeah.
I think the parts that I liked about it was the world development and like the politics and the everything, because the relationship was garbage and it made me so upset. Like I've said many times over the course of the season, and it was such a big part of the book was the drama. So it just sucks because you fall so in love with that relationship in book 1 and then it falls apart in book 2 that it was like hard to get through. But I'm glad I read it, you know. But I'm ready to move past that.
I am so excited for season 3.
Yeah. And what are we doing in season 3?
We are going to read From Blood and Ash. Which I am so excited about.
I'm excited too.
Because it's a whole new world. It's a complex world with lots of different creatures.
I've heard it's darker.
It is darker. It's more adult.
Okay.
In a way.
Okay.
Like, it just feels less juvenile.
Okay. Are the characters older?
No.
Okay.
But in the sense that sometimes, you know what? Okay, I might end up eating my words after we dive deep into it, but like, for me, the way I feel about From Blood and Ash is that the characters are more mature. You don't have those like silly moments the way you have other frustrating moments, and there's tension in other ways and peril and drama in other ways, but the way that like Violet and Xaden just feel so high school, you don't have that in the romantic relationships in From Blood and Ash.
Okay.
Again, I might end up eating my words, but that's what I'm saying from now.
I'm excited.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited. For me, what's super fun is that doing our seasons, we get to open new worlds up to you so that it just opens up more memes I can send you and more theories we can talk about and just more books and book boyfriends and all that kind of stuff that, you know, we can't do because you haven't read the book yet.
Yeah.
So it's going to be fun. And what's also fun is, unless plans change, From Blood and Ash has a prequel series that Sword and Smut, who's a great Instagram account to go follow her, she has a fun reading order that weaves the prequel series into From Blood and Ash.
Okay.
So we may
do that.
Do that.
We'll see
Yeah.
what the future holds.
Exactly. And it's a whole new cast of characters.
Yeah.
That arguably I like better than the characters in From Blood and Ash. Yeah.
Than the characters in
Flesh and Fire.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So it'll be fun. It'll be really fun.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
I enjoyed Navarre, but I'm also excited.
Yeah. You're gonna enter the world of Solace.
Soulless.
Yeah. Kingdom of Solace.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I've been avoiding all the things.
Yeah. Keep
so
doing
I
that.
don't know.
Keep doing that. So, besties, that being said, you can pick up a copy of From Blood and Ash from our Amazon storefront.
Yeah.
And you'll hear from us soon about season 3.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. Please rate this podcast and leave us a review. It'll help other people find us. If you haven't already, like I've been saying, maybe this is like the 5th time this episode. Please set new episodes to download so that you're sure to be up to date. If you're interested in supporting our podcast, like I said just now, we have our Amazon storefront where you can find our favorite things, books we love, and more. You can follow us on Instagram at Book Bound Pod and on TikTok at Book Bound Besties. We would love your reactions to this episode. Please share that you're listening to it, to your stories. Tag us in theories that you think are interesting so that we can talk about them. And
Yeah. Just because we're done with the series doesn't mean we can't refer back to it and talk about theories and stuff if you have cool things to share. So.
absolutely, exactly. And as always, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback, please email us at bookboundpod@gmail.com. Let's get to reading.